Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's plan webinar. Today's plan webinar is the ABCs of Technical Review Committee 2023 version. We're right about at noon. There's still people coming in. So just to go through some pointers, please don't forget to check out our website for our planning and zoning training page. There you can find previous webinars, our schedule of upcoming webinars, as well as our planning and zoning board handbooks. Those handbooks also have optional tests that you can take, and you can take those tests and receive a certificate of completion, or just take the test and you won't receive your certificate, but you can take the test, see how you're doing on your planning and zoning board knowledge. As also, please take advantage of our anonymous online survey. Let us know how we're doing, or if there's any training topics that you would like to see in the future. And quickly reviewing the webinar logistics, please utilize the chat for your questions. At this point, Matt and I will be glad to answer questions during the presentation if they're on point and we can answer them quickly. Other than that, we ask you to utilize the chat and save your questions for the end. And Alvina Snagach, who is our assistant planner, will be monitoring the chat and keeping us on track with time and helping us out with questions. So welcome again. Today we're doing our plan webinar TRC, the 2023 version. I'm Stephanie Verdile. I'm a principal planner with the Office of Planning and Development. And with me today is senior planner with Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission, Matt Monahan.
Morning.
Hi, Matt. Matt has extensive experience in municipal land use planning on a wide variety of issues, including the creation and development of land use regulations and amendments, economic development programs, and serving as a circuit rider planner for various communities within the Central New Hampshire region. So Matt has graciously agreed to stick around with us today if we run a bit over, as well as he's agreed to take questions after the webinar has ended. And we just ask that you respect Matt's time and keep your questions just related to the webinar. So going through the agenda, I'm going to review quickly a brief overcap of the RSAs that are involved with the TRC process. What is a TRC and their roles and responsibilities? What types of TRC are used in the development review process? You could either have TRCs with site plan review authority or as an advisory committee. And then Matt and I will review some examples of various different kinds of municipal TRCs and what they're used for. And then we'll move into our question and answer period. So let's review the RSAs that are involved in the land use planning that you have to have in place in order to even get to a TRC. So first, the municipality needs to have authorized a planning board according to 673(1). Once the planning board has been established, the first thing the planning board does is elect officers and draft and adopt bylaws or their rules of procedure. Once the planning board has elected officers and written their rules of procedure, they must adopt the master plan. So once you have all that in order and all that in place, give the authorization to the planning board the authority to review and approve subdivisions, as well as the creation of subdivision regulations. So after the completion of the planning board, the officers, the bylaws, the master plan, the planning board has the ability to review and approve subdivisions. The next step would be granting the planning board the authority to adopt zoning, to adopt a zoning ordinance. And that will be done through RSAs 674-16 and 674-18. So once the zoning ordinance has been adopted, the final step would be to authorize the municipality to have site plan review authority under RSA 674-43. And then one more layer after that is RSA 674-43-3 is where the technical review committee gets its authority to review site plans. The law says the local legislative body of a municipality may by ordinance or resolution authorize the planning board to delegate its site plan review powers and duties in regard to minor site plans to a committee of technically qualified administrators. So that is the beginning of the TRC process. So what is a TRC? Basically, it's a committee appointed and authorized by the legislative bodies of the municipality, either by city council or the town meeting vote. The legislative body would determine the type of TRC, either granting that TRC the site plan review authority or without authority, and they become an advisory committee. They are made up of municipal officials, like the RSA says, which could be department heads or other board or commission members. And there is a chair and a vice chair of the TRC because it is considered an arm of the planning board. So roles and responsibility of the TRC. TRCs can either be, again, advisory or have approval authority, and they are included as part of the development review process. They provide technical assistance to applicants on the development process. It informs all town departments on development projects, and it creates communication with the planning board and other municipal departments. So those kind of what the TRC's role is for. They actually serve as a, kind of like a facilitator or an enabler or whatever you'd like to call it in order to help the town and help the applicant get through the development process. So let's talk about the TRC with site plan review authority. So again, the municipality adopts the RSA of 674-43-3. So that is authorizing the planning board to delegate their site plan review powers and duties to a minor site plan review committee. So that minor site plan review committee, the TRC, they act as a mini planning board. They're a mini me of the planning board. So the planning board then must create the criteria for what constitutes a minor site plan and delegate that to the TRC, the minor site plan review authority. The TRC should be included in the zoning ordinance as well as in the site plan regulations. The minor site plan review committee, just shortening to that, the TRC with site plan review authority. It should be in the zoning ordinance and in the site plan review regulations. The TRC should have the same rules of the planning board, because again, they're a mini me of the planning board, so they need rules of procedure. They need to have meeting dates and times. They need to have what a completed application is. They need to have checklists, waivers, meeting application deadlines, appeals. So all of those things like the planning board has, the minor site plan review committee or the TRC with site plan review authority has to have the same set of guidelines, the same rules of procedures. And within that, the planning board is the one to dictate what constitutes or what makes up or what qualifies for a minor site plan review. I'll talk a little bit about that more in a minute, but that comes along with the planning board having given the authority to delegate its site plan review powers to a minor site plan committee. They also have to say by regulation what constitutes a minor site plan. So what types of applications the minor site plan review of TRC would have. So if your TRC has minor site plan review authority, then again, it's the planning board's job to determine what constitutes that site plan review for them to decide upon. So you can, some examples are, what constitutes the difference between just issuing a building permit. If I'm a business and I want to put a 50-foot addition on to store my garbage cans and my snow blower, do I really have to go to site plan review for that? Or can I have that done just through a building permit? So it's the planning board's responsibility to determine all of those thresholds and what would trigger a minor site plan review, a major site plan review, or something that could be done administratively. A change of use from an existing allowed use in an existing building, and you've got all the infrastructure, you've got the utilities, you have the parking. If I am a bookstore and I'm changing into a florist, and it's an allowed use in the zone, that change of use could be a minor site plan review. And again, those have to be spelled out. So to work with the planning board about what they want to consider to be a minor site plan review, with the TRC having authority to approve or deny, have that review authority over those types of applications. Construction of new parking spaces, or again, work with your planning board and your town departments. If I'm a business and I need to add 2 or 3 more spaces for deliveries, is that just a permit through DPW, or is that a building permit? I want to add 5 more spaces at X amount of square feet. Then all those things should be spelled out of whether or not that expansion of parking is a threshold to have minor site plan review or major site plan review. You need to be looking at things like of drainage and safety and striping and all those kinds of things. There still needs to be some town review, but what threshold or what level is up to the planning board to decide. A major home business may be another thing that could be very useful for TRC site plan review committee for a minor site plan, maybe a daycare or something like that, where maybe it doesn't necessarily need major site plan review, but still needs that town authorization to have that use allowed. Temporary events are another thing that can be utilized by municipalities to have a TRC with site plan approval authority. Matt and I will give a few examples of that later on. But again, it's another threshold, another idea for the TRC with site plan review authority to have jurisdiction over. Knowing again, like the TRC is a mini planning board, so knowing that at any time the TRC with site plan approval authority, either the applicant or one member of the TRC can request that application be brought in front of the planning board. Now, and that needs to be spelled out in your rules of procedure and what constitutes, what makes up, what the thresholds are for the minor site plan review. They also can have that out. So say it's something that very much qualifies to be a minor site plan review, but say there's something with that application that maybe is going to increase the intensity of the site, maybe increase traffic. Maybe it's a Roma Joe's going to a Dunkin' Donuts, or Domino's going to a Dunkin' Donuts. Use is allowed in the zone, but is one of those uses going to be more intense for the site, where the site plan review committee can say, yeah, we think this needs, maybe a traffic study. So traffic study is not within TRC, if that's in the regulations, then they could bump that up to the planning board. So just so there's always that kind of that out that should be built in, that if something does come in, the minor site plan review committee has the option and the ability to forward that to the planning board if that particular application is deserving of it. So some benefits with the TRC that has site plan review authority. It alleviates the applicant and the planning board from having to review minor site plans. The planning board, as you know, if there's any planning board members out there, you have a lot of work to do. And sometimes a change of use application that could very easily be taken care of at a different level with your mini-me planning board. It alleviates that from the applicant having to go full blown to a planning board, and for the planning board to be able to have that on their docket. It streamlines the development review process for the applicant. It saves time and money for the municipality and the developer in the development process. And it can also help provide the conceptual consultation review. And again, alleviating that from the planning board's docket, something like that can be taken care of with the TRC, with site plan approval authority. So now I'm quickly going to review TRC just as an advisory committee. So it's set up the same through municipal authorization, same committee members of department heads or other boards. Same kind of premise, designed to provide technical assistance to the applicants, streamlines the development process. They're just advisory, so they have no approval authority. So they're just getting the applicant ready for that planning board meeting. So they provide the review and comment on subdivision and site plan applications. They can provide conceptual consultation, review, and input for an applicant. If it's a big project and, maybe the applicant would like to have the ability to get some insight from the department heads. That would be police, fire, sewer and water if you have them, DPW, planning, code, maybe assessing, whatever the guidelines say for what departments can be involved in the TRC committee. That applicant, if the big application coming in, can utilize the time in front of the department heads, and then prepare to go to the planning board for a conceptual consultation, so that the applicant and the department heads and the planning board all know what types of concerns or topics that they spoke about, and it can help that developer, help that applicant through the process, so that they know what's expected of them. And if you have the TRC as just advisory, usually there's planning staff or maybe one member of the TRC that is the one that can report to the planning board. So usually, like if it's planning staff, since it's a meeting, you can take minutes, and then those minutes can be included in the planning board's packet for their meeting if that TRC is done in between the planning board and a deadline. So it should be built in to the planning board schedule and that way that the planning board can know what was discussed, what concerns the fire department, the police department had with this application. And then it's more of a productive conversation when the applicant gets to the planning board meeting. So overall, just some general benefits of the TRC, either with or without site plan or review approval authority. It fosters cooperation and communication with municipal departments over development projects, whether they're large or small. It informs the other departments of large projects. You may have a large housing development coming in, so it may be beneficial to involve the school. They should be aware of what's going on. You could also include them as a member of the TRC, either with site plan review authority or without. They don't have to attend all the meetings if there's nothing that applies to them, but it's good to bring them into the loop. It can assist departments with budgets and CIP items. Again, that if they know what big developments are coming along, or something is a big, site plan is being phased, or if there's a residential subdivision that's being phased, then police and fire or other municipal departments can add those, add another plow into their budget, add that into CIP. So not only does it help the developer and the applicant through the process, it's beneficial for the town for their long-term planning. Again, I spoke about the conceptual review. It's very easy process for the applicant to go through. They have all the department heads there at one time. It saves the developer from going around and trying to get in touch with police and fire, and then, they get to a meeting and they haven't been able to talk with police or fire. So it just saves a lot of time, and it's a very beneficial process for the town to know what's going on all at once, for the department heads to all be on the same page as far as when they're coming in, what the project entails, and you have that communication and awareness of all departments that can be shared with the planning board. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt now. So Matt's going to explain setting up on the TRC.
How about I unmute myself? There we go.
Just move forward one slide there, Matt.
Oh, okay. There we go. And 14.
There.
All right. Here we go. Yeah. So if you want to do a TRC in your town, the first thing you got to figure out is what are you looking to do, right? Like big picture wise. Do you want to do the one where they're actually approving the minor site plans, or do you want to do the option where it's the advisory role? And once you've figured that piece out, then you can move forward from there, right? The key thing to remember is if you're doing the advisory one in particular, early communication between the town and the applicant is key, right? Like that's the big piece. Sharing information as soon as possible so that they can incorporate it in their design and address those issues. And I think that's the key takeaway on that one. It's information early, right? Like this 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet there, information as early as possible. Once you've kind of figured out what you're going to do, right? Are you doing the advisory one or the approval one? You want to look at, how do you lay it out? Like where in the submittal timeline do you want to do it? How flexible do you want to be with the meeting dates? And then you can also do, as we have an example later, you can do it topic or event specific. There's a couple examples of that. So you want to make sure you're reaching out to all the department heads for both types, right? And I know Steph just talked about, for example, the school. You want to reach out to those guys and make sure that they're aware of things. They may have, on the site plans, they're probably not going to participate on a commercial site plan, but who knows? They may have something that they're dealing with, and a particular type of site plan comes across the desk, and they may have something they want to weigh in on. Let's see what else. You can also include third-party participants, right? So think about your engineer, your attorney. You'd have to, post an escrow to cover that. But sometimes those engineer comments, for example, will help with drainage design and those kinds of things. Why would you want the attorney there? If you have, say, for example, like a tricky easement or something like that, you may want them at the table to chime in as well. So what should you talk about? Ideally, you kind of want to go around the room, department heads, what do you got? What are your concerns? But also somebody representing, I would say, the planning board's interests. So that could be, for example, the town planner staff, circuit rider, whatever the case may be. You kind of want to touch on the zoning and regulations and any checklist issues that you may see coming up, so that they can take that into consideration as well. Oh, I missed this second bullet up here, right? So department heads, you can basically include an option where they can just send comments in if they have no comment. So for example, that SAU scenario, say they're regularly invited. They've got, no comment on the Dunkin' Donuts. They just send an email. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. They just send an email and say, hey, no comment, Dunkin' Donuts, or whatever the case may be. Minutes, as Steph mentioned earlier, or notes should be provided to the planning board and other participants, so that there's a clear record of what the conversations were. That feedback should be provided as soon as possible to the applicant to make sure that they can fold that into their process for making revisions. Another thing too, to kind of force the importance of the TRC, is to hold fast to those deadlines in your regulations about when revised materials can come in, right? Part of the benefit for this, for the planning board, is if you're going through and you're saying, okay, here are the issues we see with your initial application, please make the revisions. The day of the planning board, nobody likes getting a study or updated plan set the day of the planning board or a couple of days early. TRC should take care of that, so that the applicant is making those changes in a reasonable time frame, so that the town, the planning board, and the planner or whatever can look at them and make informed commentary on it. And lastly, on this slide, community can offer, suggest other TRCs as needed. So you can say, hey, applicant, I know we have one in the books, but if we have additional questions, we can set another one if you want. So with that in mind, here's the Allenstown model. This one is advisory. It takes place after plans are submitted. From a scheduling standpoint, it's within a week of submittal, but the days, you try and coordinate it based on the day, based on everybody's availability within that week. So it's going to be the department heads, the planner, so that would be me, and then the planning board chair, and if needed, the third-party consultants, right, the engineer and the attorney. Department heads can opt out with an email if they don't have any comments. An escrow is provided for those non-municipal employees that are participating. They do enforce the nothing after, and they meet and consider applications twice a month. So it actually works out. The end of the TRC goes something like, hey, here are these things you got to work on. Do you think you'll be ready for this meeting or that meeting? And then the applicant says, yeah, let's go for that one, and that's kind of how that plays out. So I'll issue a memo at the end of that, which is kind of the snapshot of everything. And that review memo goes to the applicant and the planning board and everyone. And then I'll issue a second one after they make changes, if they make changes. And if they want to, we've had a couple applications. Well, actually, that's on a later slide, but so that's the gist of Allenstown. Pembroke, they take place after submittal, and it's on a regularly scheduled date and time. It's a pretty similar setup as Allenstown, where it's department heads, a planning board rep, the town planner would be there, including the department heads, and then engineer, attorney if needed. Escrow as well there too. No material considered, and they stick to that no material after the cutoff date. And again, here you can request, if you need more time, just send something in writing so that they can document it and say, yep, we're continuing them to the next meeting. Another review memo process, and very similar to Allenstown. I would say the big difference is it's the town planner instead of me, the circuit rider. Chichester, they take place before submittal. And it's for major site plans and major subdivisions only. They recommend it for minor. Again, the feedback benefits the applicant as much as it does the board. So that's kind of why they recommend it. So it's basically, it includes the same that you would find in Allenstown. So me as CNHRPC plus all the department heads and a planning board rep. Same deal with the escrow. And then the two memos come out as well. And they hold to the submittal dates as well. Boscawen, their TRC has the authority for minor approval. And it follows the planning board site plan approval process. Applicant TRC or abutters may request planning board review. Appeals are made to the planning board, and the membership consists of all the department heads, which in their case, they also have planning staff that participate. So this is the interesting thing on Allenstown. So this slide, it shouldn't say last summer, it's actually a couple summers now. They had some large projects come in. We did a TRC before they even submitted. Then we did on both cases, just to kind of start thinking about some of those questions, right? That conceptual type process. Then we had the mandated one after they submitted. And then we actually got into some questions about traffic and things like that. So we had transportation specific TRCs down the road. And it really helped everybody involved. It helped provide information, answer a lot of questions, and it was helpful to everybody involved. This one here, so this one is Laconia, outdoor large gathering event specific TRC. So think Bike Week, right? So they have a committee that is, from the regular TRC. So in their case, it's planning, police, fire, water, public works, code enforcement, and licensing. They have the same review and approval authority over site plan applications. They have deadlines and a meeting schedule and all that. And the gist of this is to basically take that large event planning element, give it a venue that's going to be rigorous and including all the department heads, but shift that from the planning board's workload to the department heads who are going to be administering that site plan the day of the event. Some final thoughts here are TRC is designed to ensure that information is provided to the applicant as early as possible, and truthfully the planning board, right? So the more you can push that conversation and the sharing of information, the answering of questions to the beginning, the better the clarity is at the meetings and all that. There's many ways to use the TRC, right? So the two basic ones are the advisory one, and then the second one being the formal approving one. The third bullet here, it's basically better clarity for all. Fourth, we've got for communities with TRC after submittal, an applicant that needs more time between the TRC should make that request in writing. Essentially what they're doing is they're asking for a continuation. So that's why you want to make sure that's in writing. The flexibility benefits the applicant and municipality. And then lastly, it can assist, this is the administrative one, where they're actually approving, right? Assist the planning board in workload by assuming minor site plan review and then conceptual reviews on the advisory side. So I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so. Here, hang on a second.
Mhm.
Yeah, Matt brought up some good points. Just to kind of back up a little bit, where if you have the ability to have if you have a town engineer, to definitely include them on the TRC committee, or again, as the option, if you're going to do a third-party review type of thing. Sometimes they're needed, sometimes they're not. Kind of the same, the same premise of the school. It's good to name them as being a participating member for when you do need them there. But they don't need to be that at every meeting, just when there's those applicable applications, as well as the town attorney. And it's good to kind of spell that out. Like Matt gave a really good example of that. If something's coming through and there's, maybe easements or right of ways that need to be discussed, it would be good to have the town attorney, maybe at least even just provide written comments if they're unable to attend. So that way that the planning board knows that the town attorney's been, has commented on this, is aware of it, and it helps the planning board reach that decision. One of the things I wanted to talk about when there's questions of like not allowing any new information, it's that it's really important to the public and to the board and to the department heads and to the applicant, is to really try and limit how many revisions of plans that are on file. Okay, it's, towns have limited capacity to maintain revision after revision, and it costs money for the applicant, and it costs a lot of time and effort for municipal departments, as Matt, knows, being a planner. So if there may be revisions that come out of TRC. That's why the little caveat where no new plans or no new information kind of thing is in that, for that streamlining the process. Because if you're going to make an applicant, say the fire department, wants a bigger hammerhead for whatever reason on the site plan application. So he can tell that to the applicant, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the applicant's got to go back and review or redo the plans and then submit those with the revised hammerhead to the planning board. As long as the planning board knows about it, as long as it's a condition of approval, there's really no need to have multiple revisions. You can go through with the initial set and then go through the planning board approval process, see what type of notes and approvals are going to be put on the plan, and then any changes that arise from TRC or any engineering comments that arise from TRC or design can be added to a final plan. It just kind of makes it easier. And again, it's streamlining it for the developer, and it's making it much easier for town staff to only deal with, two sets of plan instead of revision dates. That's not, to be for every application. Some applications it's warranted for large revisions and additional plan sets. But, Matt, would you say the same thing kind of the majority of the time? Just that final revision after approval is all that's really needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, think about how a lot of times applications play out, right? If there is no some sort of review. The first night, let's just make up a date, September 1st, it hits the planning board's table. The applicant is getting their first real sense of feedback right then and there. Then they say, okay, yep, make those changes, come back. October 1st, they're back for the next meeting. And then they get into, you know, okay, we're complete. Let's open the hearing. And at that point, you may get other things that shake out. Maybe you've got department head comments that have come in between the meetings, and now they've got to address that hammerhead or show
Right.
a easement for a sewer line or whatever. And now they're coming back November 1st, right? And it's been 3 months. If you could have taken all that feedback, pushed it up to the front, that first revision that they've made, they've got that easement in there. They've got the hammerhead in there. They've got all the waivers they think they need. And then, you know, that September 1st meeting, maybe they're just getting the abutter comments on screening. And then they come back October 1st. They've got the screening and whatever else they need to address. And it's like, okay, now we can really get to business. And it's not this back and forth tennis match about what are you looking for on the plan to get that real first draft for the planning board's consideration at the hearing.
Right. Right. So yeah, so those are some of our final thoughts. Then we're starting to wrap up a little bit and check to see if we have any questions. This is our contact information. If you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to Matt or myself. And again, just think, just keep in mind that keep for your questions for Matt to keep them limited to the TRC presentation. And for more information, again, we're always plugging our website and where you can find more information about our webinars. We do ask if you're able to participate in our anonymous survey. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what kind of topics you'd like to see in the future. We do have our planning and zoning board handbooks that are available on our website. Along with that, we have the tests that you can take. You can take those tests either with certificate to show completion, or you can take them without completion. They're there, they're updated annually, so the tests change. So it's a good way to test your knowledge as a planning and zoning board member. Our next webinar is scheduled for November 9th. We did have to play with the date a little bit, so it was moved up a week. So please pay attention to the date as November 9th from 12 to 1 p.m. And our colleague, Ken Gallagher, will host Nicole McKinsey. She is a U.S. Census Data Bureau dissemination specialist who will discuss the types and review of data used collecting information that planners can use. So that will be November 9th from 12 to 1 p.m. And so I'll check in with Alvina. Do we have any questions?
I do not see any in the chat. I'm actually putting stuff about our tests and feedback
Okay.
survey in the chat, but there are no questions yet.
Okay.
And if somebody wants to ask a question, you can raise your hand. We will unmute you or put it in the chat.
Yep. We can wait a few minutes to see if any questions come through. So the one thing I did want to say that just, for clarity too, which is really important. I know we have talked about it, but I just want to kind of reiterate the point that no matter what TRC, if your community adopts, whether they have review authority or whether they're just the advisory committee, their roles are very, very similar, and they can still be very productive. The advisory committee can still be very productive with the review process. And I remember when I was a town planner, we had a large project that came in that was relatively new technology. And it was my first, piece of advice to them was to come to TRC. And we're going to learn from the fire department, the police department, and all the other departments, about this relatively new technology that was coming to the town. And it was very helpful. It was very helpful for the planning board, and it was very helpful for the applicant. It's kind of like what Matt was saying. When you have that big thing, it's before a final, formal application submission. This application came in. They did submit plans and an application and a narrative so that TRC members were aware of location and the layout and the technology that was going to be used for this application. And it was, they took all the information in, and as the town planner, I updated the planning board, and then, the applicant went back and came back, another month later, 2 months later, came through TRC again in order to show the committee that they had addressed their concerns or they provided more information. And it really, for something that big and for something that was like new technology, so to speak, coming to the municipality, TRC is crucial for that. And there's, especially if it's something that's that big that they needed to get additional, professional assistance. They needed to go find some specialists. Then it provides them that time and it gives them the opportunity to do that. And then the planning board then can, utilize again, trigger that third party review and utilize that to address concerns and learn about the project and learn about what kind of safety concerns or traffic concerns would be, associated with the project. And they have that special third party review avenue to be able to do that.
Yeah, another thing that made me think of stuff is when you have all those different department heads and possibly like the town engineer at the table, sometimes, one of the department heads may not have an issue, but sitting at the table with the rest of the group, it may trigger things that they may think of. There may, for example, be the road agent, initially has no concerns, but then, the town engineer's talking about something with something, the wetlands or something, I don't know. And it triggers something, the road agent say, oh yeah, you know what, we might need a culvert at that driveway, things like that. So just being in the same room sometimes can help them think through issues that they may not even be seeing, just from their perspective. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point. And again, it's helpful for the municipal employees, for the board, and for the applicant to have everybody in one room at one time. So when that application comes across the counter in the planning office, within the TRC, within review process procedure, they're gonna issue, or submit, 7 more extra copies, whether that's electronically or paper old school way. So the TRC members get the same exact packet that the planning board gets. They get the application, they get the narrative, they get all the information. Even if they're just advisory, they get the same information. They get the waiver requests if there are any, because that's all important for the department heads, for the TRC members to know. To Matt's point, if the applicant is waiving, a 10-year traffic study thing or whatever, he's waiving a drainage plan, or they're asking for a waiver for a wetland scientist, then those department heads can all see that, and DPW may have an issue. Well, I need to know where the wetlands are for drainage, for culverts, all those kinds of things. It's all part of the ingredients to get that applicant through. So even if your TRC does not have site plan review authority, they are still eligible to see that site plan go forward. They should be getting all the same information as the planning board. And that planning board staff or a member of the TRC, like Matt brought up, you can have a planning board member can be a member of TRC. Then it would be, if you don't have planning staff, then that planning board member would be the one to report back to the planning board about what happened, take notes or minutes of the meeting, and then make sure that the meeting and the notes for that application stay with the application, so that they don't get messed up within the big planning board thing, but it's part of the public record, and just making sure that if people want to look back or review what was said at TRC, and if the applicant followed through, maybe there's an enforcement issue, or maybe there's a condition of approval issue, then you have those minutes that took place from that TRC meeting with that application.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Yeah, that's a good point about the waiver request, right? I mean, the planning board may see a waiver request come in and like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's totally reasonable. But you get a department head may say, hey, you know what? I got an issue with that. I need to see X thing. So yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, again, so
Group.
then that kind of, snowballs into the planning board, they taking that consideration into request, that request into consideration as far as, building communication. The planning board, when they're in the planning board, looking at applications, they don't have a police hat or a fire hat or a DPW hat on, they have a planning board hat on. So it's important to know that, we don't want the planning board to be granting a waiver for something that could be detrimental to police or fire or DPW or code. So it's important that they know that. And so again, it's streamlining and it's informing the boards, it's building that communication. between the board and the department heads, which is really important. And then they're all aware of it. They're all aware of, no, that waiver wasn't granted, and the planning board can use that as justification for maybe not granting a waiver. Due to concerns from our department heads, we feel as though this information should be, submitted. So even without site plan review authority, TRCs are still very, very important in the development role, and very important in the development role with the applicant and with the planning board. So
Definitely.
we'll give one more quick check for questions. Do we have any more in the chat, Alvina? Or any questions in the chat?
Nope, there are no questions in the chat.
Okay. At that
All right.
point, I think that we're done. I think we can let everybody go and enjoy the last nice day, of the season. So thanks, Matt, for your time and your
Sure.
expertise. As always, we appreciate it very much. And there's our contact information. Again, if you have any questions you think of after the webinar, you can reach out to me anytime. Or I can reach out to Matt and just make sure that you're asking about the TRC today. So look forward to us again for our next webinar, November 9th. And thank you very much for joining us. Have a good day.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you
Thanks,
later.
Matt. Thank you.
We'll see you, Steph. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Alvina.